Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Rider Ramblings. It's a little bit grey today, hopefully it doesn't rain. Today, I thought I would discuss visiting Paris, because I did one not so long ago about visiting France, and I thought I would discuss the possibility that while you're in France, you might wish to come to Paris. You might think, oh, we're not that far away. We'll come for the day, or you're planning to come to France and you decide we'll spend a couple of days in Paris or whatever. So, the first thing that I recommend is that you need to plan what you want to see. We'll discuss whether or not you should bring your motorcycle, vehicle or whatever into Paris towards the end. But first let's talk about what there is to see, do and various other things. And how to do that. And then we'll discuss the logistics of Paris. So, first of all, there is an enormous amount of touristic items to see and sights, and non-touristic sights and items to see as well. You've heard of the main ones. I mean, you know, the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, Versailles, you know, that type of thing, Arc de Triomphe. But that's just, you know, a drop in the ocean. There's thousands. Well, I would say there's certainly hundreds. Whether there's thousands, I might be exaggerating slightly. But there's so much to see that you've got to plan what it is you want to see. Now remember, Paris is both a capital city and a tourist destination. So it's going to be quite busy. That's a bit of a mild understatement, actually. It's going to be quite busy. It has an exceptionally good transport system to get around the city. You have the metro, which you've all heard of. You've got lots of buses. You have trams. And you've also got the RER. And occasionally you can use trains as well, depending on exactly where you're going. So there's lots. Now, taxis, rickshaws, Ubers, I would probably recommend that you don't use those. Because they're the slowest. The metro is probably the quickest. Then you've got your buses and trams. And I mean, the metro is exceptionally good because basically it covers... Ooh, what's going on here? This looks interesting. Don't know what's going on here. But basically it covers all of the centre of Paris. Right, so what should you go and see? Well, this is very much up to you, what you're interested in. And you need to think carefully about how much time you've got. Oh, I see the problem. They're digging up something here. You have to think about how much time you actually have available. Now, don't sort of think, oh, I can see 4 or 5 items in a day, unless you're just going to go and look at the outside of something very quickly. It's not going to happen. Okay? And the second thing is that if you want to go into any of the attractions, book online and pay online and get yourself a, if it's available, not all of them have it, get yourself a time slot. Okay, and you must be there for your time slot. That's important. You can't think, oh, I'll turn up an hour late or whatever. You might suddenly find that, you know, the slot's been taken and you're not allowed in. So book online for whichever attraction you want to see. Now there are queues for nearly everything, and I do mean nearly everything. Some of them are legendary. They really are quite a thing to behold. If I remember rightly, and I'm going from memory, the Louvre allows 3,000 people an hour in, I think. Now, I might be wrong on that, and I will check, and if I am wrong, I'll put the number below. But it's an enormous number, an hour. Okay? They manage it, and it's all done, and it's all managed, and people get in and so on, no problem whatsoever. But that gives you some idea of how many people are there. So if you want to see the Moaning Lisa, then there's going to be probably 1,000 other people wanting to see the Moaning Lisa at the same time. Well, not as many, but there's certainly going to be a lot of people. Now, the Moaning Lisa is about the size of an A4 piece of paper. I know, I've seen it. And it's going to take you quite a while to get to the front of the queue to see it. So don't think, oh, we can see the Moaning Lisa in 5 minutes. That is not going to happen. Okay? And getting into the Louvre, as I say, with the number of people trying to get in, could take you, you know, nearly a good hour for your time slot. Okay? So, just bear that in mind, that although your time slot might be for 10 o'clock or whatever, it might be 11 before you get in through the door. Okay? So in inclement weather, make sure you've brought waterproofs or an umbrella or something. Okay? And then, if I remember rightly, and again I'm going from memory, so this could be incorrect, there's 15 kilometers of halls, corridors, galleries, whatever you want to call them, in the Louvre. Best will of the world, if you're just going to walk round it without stopping, it's going to take you 3 hours. That's without stopping. Most people walk at about 5-6 kilometers an hour, so you are looking at 3 hours without stopping. Sorry, I'd forgotten about this up here. So you need to make sure you've got the time to actually see the item that you want to see, or go and see the attraction you want to see, because it is going to take you quite a long time to get in there to see it. Okay. So just bear that in mind. Bear that in mind when you're deciding what you want to come and see. I'd forgotten they were digging up the road here. I would have come the other way if I'd remembered. Never mind. So, for example, I've been to the Louvre twice and I've seen about half of it. I've spent about half a day each time at the Louvre. So, you'll have to decide which galleries you're going to see at the Louvre. You're not going to see all of them. Okay, so not just we're going to go to the Louvre, but which galleries you're going to see. Now, say you decide, okay, well, we'll go to the Musée d'Orsay for the Impressionist paintings. I've been 3 times, and I've seen all the Impressionist paintings that are on permanent display. I haven't seen any of the temporary exhibitions. Well, I have seen some of them, but and that took me 3 times. That's 3 half days to see that. So that gives you some idea of how long. And again, you've got queues to get in, and so book your time sensibly to get in. Okay. Now, try when you're actually coming to Paris, try and get things that are close to each other. I know there's a good transport system, and I know it's relatively easy to get from one side to the other and this type of thing. But at the busy times, it could take, a bit longer to get between the various stations, the various attractions, and you may have to change a couple of times depending on which ones you want to see. So try and find attractions that are in sort of similar areas. So for example, you might want to go and visit the Eiffel Tower in the morning and the Arc de Triomphe in the afternoon. Now, the Arc de Triomphe is small, but the queue to get in can be quite long. But once you're in, it's really basically a photo opportunity of Paris. There is a small museum in it, but it is mainly a photo opportunity of Paris. But it's probably going to take you an hour to get in, and then half an hour while you're there, and then you're going to be looking at possibly, half an hour to get to your next place, wherever the next place is. So if you've had a good lunch or whatever, then it's going to, you're looking at probably 2 hours for an attraction that's half an hour. That will take you about half an hour to see. Whereas the Eiffel Tower, now the queues for the Eiffel Tower can be immense. And I do mean immense. They can be legendary. So bear that in mind. They've got a completely new system underneath the Eiffel Tower of barriers, gates, and various other things to slow people down and to stop any terrorist attacks and that type of thing. And it's also to stop a lot of the scammers, but that's something I'll discuss later. So just remember, it's going to take time. Now, the Eiffel Tower is quite expensive. You can walk up if you're fit. It costs, I think it's €12 to walk up to the second stage. I think it's €12. I can't remember. But it's nearly €30 to get to the top if you use the lifts. And it can be completely and utterly jammed with people. So you need to choose your days wisely. And I do mean that. You do need to choose your days wisely. Weekends, for example, tend to be horrendous because you've got not just the international tourists, but you've got the French tourists as well. So that's something you need to think about when to go. Now, a lot of tourist attractions are closed on a Monday because they're open on Saturday, so they close on a Monday. So take that into account when you're planning your visit, that most will be closed on a Monday. The Louvre actually is closed on a Tuesday, not a Monday. So if you wanted to see the Louvre, you can come in on a Monday and see the Louvre. But as it's the only tourist attraction open, it might be quite busy. Just bear that in mind, simply because there's nowhere else for people to go and have a look at. Now, you don't actually have to go and see the tourist attractions. There are lots and lots of other things to see. For example, there's Roman architecture just sticking out of the walls on the streets and so on in various parts. Amazing places and squares and so on to have a look at, and some fantastic architecture. So you don't actually have to go into the attractions if you don't want to. That's something you can decide to do. Right, now getting around the attractions, I'm deliberately going slowly today because of I'm talking and thinking and riding at the same time, so it's taking a bit of concentration. Right, getting around, as I mentioned, use the metro. Now, inside Paris itself, it's the metro and the RER is zoned. It goes from, if I remember rightly, zone 5 to zone 1 in the centre. Now, zone 1 in the centre, you might be worth getting what's called a carnet. This is a book of 10 tickets. You could also get a Navigo Easy, which you could load with tickets as well, which might be easier, and then you can just use, for example, the card or your phone. There is an app for that from SNCF. To actually badge your way through the barriers, which is probably easier when you're thinking about the scams, the pickpockets and that type of thing in and around the tourist areas. That's something I'll come to. Actually, I'll talk about that now. So if you're just going to be in zone 1, get yourself a carnet. This is a book of 10 tickets, either electronic or paper, your choice. Okay, and that will make your life easier, but they're really only for zone 1. You can't use them outside of zone 1, and if you try, you won't be able to get through the barrier. You will either have to go back and buy another ticket at the original station, or you might pick up a fine, and the fines, if I remember rightly, are about €75, I think. As I recall. I've never been fined yet. It probably will happen, but I've never been fined yet. As I say, it will happen at some point. But I do know the system. So scams. Let's talk about the scams at the tourist areas now. Just like any large city, you've got your usual miscreants in the city. There's not much you can do about that. It's the same in all large cities, whether that's London or New York or Rome or Paris. So you need to be on your guard. Now, one of the things that they do is that they have young girls with petitions to sign, and they'll come up to you and ask you to sign the petition. Now, this petition is completely and utterly fictitious. Okay, it is completely fictitious. What they're doing is they're casing you out to see if you're a suitable mark, and it's not the girl who's casing you out, she's just stopping you. It's somebody standing close by who's looking. And if they see an opportunity, they will then lift a phone or a wallet or a bag or something like that from you. Okay? Now the next thing that will happen, these are in the open areas, somebody may come up and say, oh, a bird has pooped on you or something like this. Let me help you get it off, right? No, a bird has not pooped on you, and a real Parisian will not say anything. This is another, if a bird does, they won't say anything. They won't tell you. This is another scam, and while they're brushing your jacket, they're lifting your wallet, purse, whatever, your watch or whatever out of your pocket. So be careful about that scam. The next scam is actually in the metro or the RER station. There are usually 3, but not always, but 3 seems to be the normal number. And they'll be on the pavement, on the quay, and they'll be watching people, and they're looking for people who are not paying attention, looking at the phone, looking at a map, not sure where they're going, discussing the weather, but literally not paying attention. And if you look around, you'll actually see these people. You can watch these 3 people. Now what will happen is they'll all get on the train beside you, and one person will dip and pickpocket you. He will immediately, or she will immediately, give that item to the second person, who will then pass it on, possibly to the third person. So by the time you've realised you've been pickpocketed and you think you know who it was who actually did the dipping, they don't have the item. They've passed it on at least once, if not twice. So the way to deal with this is A, to be aware of these people, okay, and that they're there. Look for sort of a group of 3 people who are studiously watching the crowd. And number 2, if you think they've taken you as a mark, stare at them in the face, because they don't want hassle. They really don't want hassle. So stare at them in the face, turn and face them, look at them, okay, and they will usually move away. That is usually the best way to deal with it. Okay, so that's probably the best way to deal with it. So the other scam is people at stations, airports, will come up to you and ask you if you want a taxi. Taxi drivers in Paris, in France, are not allowed to do that. This is not a taxi. They are definitely not taxis. Okay? They are private cars. There's no insurance or whatever like that. You won't know how much you're going to get charged, and they're going to take you for as much as possible. So if you want a taxi, you either call an Uber and wait for them at the Uber place, and of course they'll give you the registration number of the car, or you go to the taxi rank and wait in line for the next available taxi. Okay? Do not accept somebody saying taxi sir or whatever, just don't do it. So those are the major scams. There are, of course, others. Okay, now, what about bringing your motorbike into Paris? Well, if you have never driven in a city, then Paris is probably not the best place to learn. If you have driven in a city and you're used to driving in a city, then fine, bring your motorbike into Paris. But as I say, if you're not used to bringing a motorcycle into Paris, then Paris is into a city. Don't bring it into Paris. Now, the only reason I can think of taking a motorcycle into Paris, or the reasons are that you want to ride on the Périphérique, all 17 kilometers of it, Go down the Champs-Élysées, round Étoile, which is the Arc de Triomphe, get a photo in front of the Eiffel Tower, which might be difficult as most of that's closed off. Okay, but parking, even for motorcycles in Paris, is costly. There's no free parking in general for motorcycles in Paris, none. Okay, you're parking on the side of the road. If you've got your kit with you, you're going to need to leave it on your motorcycle because carrying it around is not acceptable. You've got to go through security at a lot of the tourist items, places, attractions. So they'll have you open all your items. Don't carry a helmet around, this type of thing. Okay, so that's something to bear in mind, that really, unless it's actually to ride in Paris and not see the attractions, don't bring your motorcycle into Paris. And that includes getting a hotel. If you want a hotel, I very strongly recommend that you get one outside of Paris in the suburbs. It's going to cost you less, and there's probably going to be secure parking. Probably. Notice the word probably. It depends where you are. Okay? Get a hotel, a bed and breakfast, a campsite, a cabin in a campsite, or whatever it is, about 10 to 15 minutes walk from an RER station or a train station. Okay? There are quite a few of these, and it will take you probably about between half an hour and an hour, depending on exactly where you decide to go, to get into the attractions in Paris. Okay? Now, I do know of 2 places in Paris that are biker friendly. You'll need to search tripandbike.com, and they will give you the details of these places. Trip and Bike, that's Trip N Bike, all one word, .com, and you'll be able to find them in there. Okay? Right, so do that. Get yourself a ticket, a return ticket from wherever it is into Paris, and then get yourself a carnet in Paris to do the travelling around Paris. Okay? Bear in mind that, for example, the carnet is for Zone 1, and you'll be surprised at what isn't in Zone 1. For example, you might decide to go to La Défense, I can't think why, but you'll be able to see it clearly from the Arc de Triomphe and places like that, and it's not in Zone 1, it's actually in Zone 2, and it's a different ticket. Your carnet doesn't cover it. You have to have a different ticket. So make sure you know the zones. They do have maps that you can get for free at all the tourist places, showing the various zones and that type of thing. So you can do that. Right, riding in Paris. So you've decided you're going to ride around the Périphérique, you're going to have a run down the Champs-Élysées, etc. A couple of things. You have to be comfortable lane splitting at speed. And I do mean more than 30 miles an hour. Although the limit is actually 30 miles an hour, and that's the legal limit, you find that a lot of people are lane splitting at about 45. Okay, now if you're on the Périphérique, most locals will pull over and give you space. Now the problem with the Périphérique is you've got locals and you've got tourists at the same time. And the tourists have absolutely no idea where they are, and the locals have to be wherever they want to be yesterday. So they're not really interested in you, so you have to watch out for them. Okay? Now, the Périphérique isn't difficult. It's easy to do, but it's just something to bear in mind. Now, inside Paris, a lot of the roads that you will want to use, like the Champs-Élysées, Étoile, the Place de la Concorde, and this type of thing, are all cobbles. That's right, cobbles. And how can I put this? They're there for A, aesthetic reasons, and B, to slow the traffic down. In the wet, even with ABS, you are not stopping in a hurry. I used to ride down the Champs-Élysées twice a week in all weathers, and I can tell you now that you have to plan your traffic lights in the wet, because you are not going to be stopping in a hurry. You're not even going to be stopping moderately quickly without your ABS kicking in, and basically the ABS does nothing. It just goes pump, 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 and that's it. You know, you suddenly find you're not really slowing down. Okay? So that's something to think about. Right, I hope that's been helpful. Please like, comment, share and subscribe. If you've been to Paris, please tell me about it in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.